Today we're going to go over ice rescue awareness operations and just the classroom portion of technician. State of Indiana doesn't actually have a certification for ice rescue. They have swift water rescue, and that's it. They don't even have surface water or dive. Everything that we'll talk about is the NFPA, was it 1680 or 1690 or whatever it is, standards. We have the equipment, we have capable people. We should be able to handle an ice rescue or even a surface water rescue incident. If you guys have any questions throughout this, don't hesitate to ask. I actually took my training, my technician level training through Dive Rescue International. Like I said, because the state doesn't recognize anything, I'm still allowed to teach it to you. I have been on several ice rescue related incidents, never with a live person, but with animals, with vehicles in the water, and with potential people like they've had over at Paddle Wheel. Was anybody on during Paddle Wheel? How'd that incident go?
It depends on what you're looking at.
Was it a monkey and a football?
There was nobody in the water.
Well, nobody knew what they were doing.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk about what we can do and some of the incidents that I've experienced, and we'll talk a little bit about that incident. Decker apparently put together a slideshow presentation. We'll try and get that up on Target Solutions too, that talks about that overall incident. I think there were like 16 agencies or 56 different people that showed up on that scene, and it wound up being a couple-hour ordeal that didn't end up being anything. But it sounds like it was a y'all come and just a big cluster of mismanagement and lack of accountability and freelancing. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the incident command system as it relates to incidents like this, and what resources we have and what resources that we need. Okay, I don't know everything. I don't even know what resources that we have available to us on a daily basis, but hopefully the battalions or the admin can put something together that allows us to have some sort of resource list. I'm not worried about that. All right, so what do we got here?
Dog in the ice.
Dog in the ice. Do we respond, or would we respond to animals on the ice? Why? Because people will go in trying to get them. Go to YouTube and type in ice rescue. I bet 9 of the 10 videos that you see are of animals on the ice and would-be rescuers trying to go out and get their animal. Okay, so we respond to animals in the ice, kind of like we do cat in a tree, to prevent a bigger incident from happening. I'll tell you one of the most interesting runs that I've ever had. It involved some straight line winds, about 100 mile an hour straight line winds that came through up north, and it took a flock of geese and ducks and just started shooting them through these vinyl sided houses. The initial call that I was on, the first response engine, was an animal inside the house. We go, there's this 14-year-old kid, he's there alone. He says, man, there's something flew through the side of the house and is upstairs. It's still kind of alive. We go up there, there's a half dead geese sitting on his parents' bed and a big hole in the side of his house. So we get to look in, we walk outside, and there's probably another 50 to 100 ducks and geese that are in a retention pond. These houses were around a retention pond that are all dead out on the ice. Okay, just from straight line winds, and there were probably another 10 houses that had been damaged, literally rockets of waterfowl going through the sides of these houses. Okay, we had to go out and get all those geese. Otherwise, what's going to happen? Kids are going to go out and get them. More importantly, animals are going to go out and get them, right? At least wintertime, you don't have the instance of disease that can happen as if it were summertime. Okay. Just one of those holy cow, I can't believe this just happened type of runs. I wish I had pictures. A lot of these happened back when you didn't have camera phones like you do today. But we respond to that. What we got here? Four-wheeler. If anybody saw the news of the last weekend, Heritage Lake, which is up in Putnam County, far west in between Indy and Terre Haute, had a guy who drove his four-wheeler out onto the ice in Heritage Lake, and it's a pretty good sized lake, and went through. They recovered his body several hours later after divers went down in about 30 feet of water and found him. Okay, so if we run on vehicles, we run on tires that are sticking up, we have run on, somebody sees the roof of a car in a retention pond. You gotta run on it. Had a guy drive drunk through a golf course up north and put his Jeep in the middle of a small water hazard, if you will. So about door level high and in the ice. Okay, those are incidents that we still have to respond on. We still have to go out, we still have to search the vehicle, and we can do that, right? Is there anything that's unsafe about surfaced water type of incidents like that? Not really. What we're concerned about is swift water, right? Swift water provides a different level of danger than surface, and we're not going to talk about swift water other than we're not doing surface or swift water ice type of incidents. Okay. What we got here? Yep, person going after their dog. Okay, I've been walking my dog downtown at the Fisherman's Wharf, and if you've ever been down there, there's a huge debris field that piles up right against one of the docks, the very first dock. Well, the dog ran out there like it was something that she could walk on, and straight in the water. Okay, now I like my dog probably better than my kids, at least it obeys. But yeah, I'm going in after that dog. Luckily, I was able to just grab her by the tuft of her neck and yank her right out. But you know, people will do that. Okay, let's go to a video. All right, so what do we got here, real quick? Person and cop. Everybody seen this? Or did you see the description?
Boys cracking, listen.
All right, why is it important to know how to throw a throw bag? Right, Glinky?
Yeah. Slick. Slick, you can hear it cracking.
Get out of here! Over the line, Brian.
Hold the rope. Hold the rope.
Hold the rope, Brian.
Shit. Hold on to the rope, Brian.
Yeah! Give me your hand! Give me your hand! Give me your hand!
How many victims do we have now? Three. Yeah, so what'd they do?
Panic.
They panicked, right? And most people are gonna panic.
The calmest guys are one out in the middle.
Yeah, and you know why? He's already been through his panic phase. Now he's in the oh crap, I've got to hang on for dear life phase, and we'll talk a little bit about that and even the phases of hypothermia.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know, hey, would-be rescuers become a problem with us, even cops. Everybody that's in first response, cops, police, EMS, they all have this need for action, right? Everybody agree?
Yeah.
I know I do. I've got a need for action, but sometimes we just have to slow down and say, hey, what can be physically done to help this person? Let's go to the next video. Not this one.
The boys.
Yes. Okay, so let's pause it real quick. Okay, we got a 3-year-old boy. I can't tell if he's propped up on a shelf or if he's just standing up. Pretty good chance that he's standing up. We've got somebody in a Gumby suit and looks like fire department and their additional personnel that are getting ready to make an actual go rescue. And you see a line right here.
Turning toward the fire department. Turning toward the FD.
Okay, so who's that? That's a cop. And what'd the cop do? Threw a throw bag.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so sometimes it can be a good thing, right? Yeah, what did the fire department fail to do? Just a simple throw bag, right? And we'll talk about different positions. We still have to put somebody and get them dressed, right? Because depending on the actual patient condition, doesn't mean that they can grab onto one of these. Okay? So just little things to think about. Sometimes they hinder us, sometimes they help us. Okay? And hopefully at one point we can start working with the PD again, especially when it comes to the incident command type of structure of stuff like this, because sometimes they get in our way, sometimes they can be a great benefit to us. All right. What we got here looks like a kid just being curious. That's what kids do. Move on. Again, more kids being curious. Maybe they dropped the ball, something. Okay, and we'll talk about decks and structures that stick up through the ice too here in a little bit. All right, so when the weather turns cold and ice starts to form, many people are attracted to the ice. Animals, both domestic, wild, may also end up in trouble in thin ice. These are reasons, the need for ice rescue training. Okay, I know we haven't had a whole lot of ice this year. Last year when we went out, we did about 4 or 5 inches of ice that we did our training on. Not something that you're typically going to do a rescue on because nobody's fallen through 4 to 5 inches, but there are still some issues that can happen. The ice that we had last week would have been perfect. It just didn't work out with the timing of this class. So we're going to try and hope that we get some ice here in the next month or so, and then actually go out and do some practical application and talk about getting in the suits and effecting the go rescue. Okay, 3 response levels for 1670, that's the number. Awareness, operations, and technician. Awareness level is scene assessment, summoning the appropriate resources, implementing site control, scene management, identifying hazards, determining rescue versus recovery. There's a second slide. And scene assessment number and condition of victims, keep witnesses on scene separate if possible. So let's talk a little bit about resources. What are the resources that we would need for an ice or even just a surface water rescue? A dive team. Let's just start there, okay? Because I don't know what the state police resources that are actually available for an immediate response are. I don't even know what Louisville has. Okay, I know Clarksville has done some dive training, but I don't know if they're up to actually, being able to respond and mitigate an actual dive rescue. Okay, so that's something that the battalions need to, I guess, work on or figure out what resources we have for these types of incidents. Who else? DNR. Okay, police, they're going to show up anyway, right? So on the paddle wheel court incident, I guess you had Jeff Police, you had the Sheriff's Department, you had DNR, State Police, so right there, 4 police agencies. And from what I understand, the call came in as a report of kids through the ice, right? So what can we utilize cops for? scene control.
That
Okay,
was the biggest problem on that.
yeah,
There was cars and fire trucks and it was
news people,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah.
Needed equipment, there was no way to get it in or out.
Yep. So that, I'll tell you another incident that we had, it was summertime, involved a call of somebody heard some kids around the water, heard splashing and a scream, and we got called. So we showed up to a retention pond in a neighborhood, and you could see footsteps going down to the actual retention pond, but you couldn't see anybody out in the water. Okay, so we established command, started a dive team. We didn't have any capabilities of going out into the water at the time, and we just didn't. And we sent the cop. Luckily, the police chief was there with us, so we had them go around and start knocking on doors in this apartment complex. Okay, and finally we narrowed it down to one apartment where the kid who they thought they saw near the pond lived. And the cops, went in there, the mom said, the kid's not here, I don't know where he is, he's supposed to be at a friend's. About 20 minutes later, they went back and said, do you mind if we just look through your house? And he was hiding under a pile of clothes in a closet because he was scared. Okay, but right there's a cop resource, right? Hey, let's find out, let's narrow this down. Okay, what kids live in the area? Where, or who potentially saw them? Did anybody else see kids around the pond? Did anybody else see kids around the ice? Okay, and that's just detective work. Let's figure out what we can do to narrow this possibility down and figure out who this might be, right? While we're still sending resources to mitigate an actual dive rescue, right? What specific resources we talked about? Ambulance, right? Obviously, got to have an ambulance, but do we need one or two?
Two.
What are they for?
The rescuer and the rescuee.
That's right. All right. Just like we do on fire incident scenes, we always send one ambulance, but if we send a civilian in that ambulance, what are we requesting? A second ambulance. And who's that ambulance for? It's for us. Okay. We also have the trolley. Apparently they're putting together a rehab trailer, so a resource of the future that may happen, but the trolley, especially in ice-related incidents, would help too. Okay. Aerial apparatus get close enough to be deployed. Man, that's a judgment call, whether you utilize an aerial apparatus. I know some people around here are against utilizing an aerial apparatus and putting a dead or a live load on it that's not necessarily it's rated for. But if you can effect a true go rescue, it's going to be 10 times faster than you can set up an aerial and put it in place. Is victim submerged, dive resources, and can aviation be utilized? If you guys search for Heritage Lake water or ice rescue, there should be some aerial video footage from a UAV. UAV that came out of Brownsburg and went out of Wayne Township, and they have a great drone footage of the actual incident in progress. So just another resource that could potentially be utilized. Where do we have a drone? Yep. Yep. I have no idea. No idea. Anybody else know?
I think it's just,
No.
I don't think it has FLIR, it's not.
There is a
rescue.
FLIR.
Yeah.
Trying to pull it up.
There's a FLIR camera, but no.
Is it a FLIR camera or FLIR binoculars? Okay. So I know that we've had a FLIR device of some sort. We've never been able to even look at it or utilize it. So that's one more resource that maybe we should do a little bit of training or at least talk about. Okay. Implement site control, scene management. So incident command's got to be a strong presence here, right? Because you're going to have multiple agencies that are responding, and more than likely somebody that hears about it, it's a y'all come anyway, right? Because it's a technical rescue level incident. If we have an actual live victim, the hope is that you get them out before anybody else shows up. Okay? And hopefully you guys have heard about these two before. Discretionary time and non-discretionary time. Okay? Discretionary time is something like a hazmat incident where you have to sit back and say, I have to plan this whole thing out before I take action, right? Otherwise, bad things can happen. Versus a non-discretionary time, I've got an 11-year-old kid who's in the ice, I can't reach him with a throw bag, I've got to go get him. Does that make sense? Okay, it's not a time to sit back and say, okay, do we need to do a GAR model? Do we need to do, a full action plan? No, this is a non-discretionary time event where we have to go and take action. Make sense? Okay. Implementing site control, scene management, and keep would-be rescuers from going on the ice. You get a parent that shows up, what's that parent going to want to do?
Go get them.
Yeah, go get them. But if we're doing it, the likelihood of them doing it decreases dramatically. Okay? Identify hazard. Is the ice over moving water? A lot of the ponds and even retention ponds that we have do have some sort of moving water, but not what I would consider a dangerous type of moving water. Okay, everybody understands springs that flow through it, or they have an inlet and then a dam that pushes it back out somewhere else. And as our city continues to grow, especially out in Fords area, you will see more and more retention ponds. You don't see a lot of them downtown. You're starting to see a little bit more. If you go where the new hotel site, the 10th and Spring, and even where the old McDonald's was, there's a place for a retention pond. So once they start to fill all that place up with concrete, those are going to start filling in. Okay, it's just an easier way to take care of rainwater rather than going through a combined sewer overflow. Okay. Identifying hazards, ice over moving water, overhead hazards, steep embankments. Even the pond over at Paddle Wheel has probably got about an 8 or 10 foot embankment. It's not a real steep embankment, but if you're out there in street clothes or even bunker gear and you start to slip down it, there's a good chance that you're going to slip right in the water. Okay, so those are hazards that just need to be identified. If we can mitigate them, great. If part of that mitigation is just, here's the line, nobody crosses this line, that's still mitigation, right? Determining rescue versus recovery. Is the victim's head above water? Does the victim respond to verbal directions? It doesn't matter if the victim responds to verbal directions. More than likely, that's still a rescue, especially in cold weather related incidents. Okay. Another pretty interesting run that I had was it was in the middle of winter, but it was not an ice related. It was a retention pond. But it was cold outside, and you could tell that this was a recovery the second that you showed up. A guy drunk tried to walk across a pond to get to his trailer, if that tells you anything, and he stuck out in the middle of the pond in this position. We showed up, and that's what his body looked like. Legs stuck in the pond like he was trying to struggle to get out, and he was stuck there. So we brought in a boat resource. They went out. Had to use a couple paddles, dig his foot out, and literally tried to get him in a body bag looking like that. Okay? Hey, buddy, you all right? He's not moving. Nobody can stand there like this. I don't care how good you are at yoga, Chad. Nobody can stand there like that for that amount of time. Okay? So just weird things do happen to recognize the difference between a rescue and a recovery. Ice, it doesn't matter if the victim's above water and then goes down below, that is still a recoverable victim. Make sense? Or a rescue victim. How long they've been in the water and how long they've been under the water. If you see them go under, again, that's a rescue to us. Okay? And we can still go out and search for a victim that we see go under. Most victims as they drown, perfect stick drawing, will float within a 6 to 8 foot radius right where they went down. Okay? People don't typically float and move and get under the ice. Hollywood is not real. They'll float straight down. Okay? So we can use pike poles to reach and try and grab that person, but more than likely they're going to be within a 6 to 8 foot radius. And we'll talk about the importance of triangulation and how to find those people. What's that?
Depths.
Okay, so different depths. I know we have a plan to go out and start doing a pre-plan of a lot of our retention ponds and just basic ponds that we have in the district. But most of them you can probably walk across. I think when we went out in the middle of Paddle Wheel, we were about, mid-chest line deep, but mud underneath. Okay, so if they're under that small or that shallow of water, we should damn near grab a hold of them, right? But we got to get out there. No. We'll send TJ with his long arms.
That waist deep.
Yeah, he's up to his knees. All right, operations level, shore base utilizes reaching throwing techniques. I got news for you. An awareness level can do one of these. Does anybody disagree? All right, is there anybody on this department that shouldn't be able to throw a throw bag other than Glinky? Fun story. Glinky's somewhat athletic, somewhat. Played basketball in high school. So he probably knows how to throw some stuff, and I think he partakes in a few adult beverages now and then, so he should be able to throw a sandbag. First time we went out to try throwing throw bags, it went
Into a power line.
straight up. Okay? And you saw what happened with that first video in the cops, right? Yeah, he threw it and it looks like it went about 10 feet. And then he walked out onto the ice and tried to pull it all up and throw it again, and it went about 4 feet. Okay? Practice with these things. That's all I can say.
Something's wrong with his aiming eye.
I think something got in his eye at that time. So, but hey, I've done it too. Where I throw it way too high and it goes 15 feet rather than 50 feet. Okay. I've not done an inventory personally, but most of our water rescue bags are how long? 75 feet. Okay, if you don't have one that looks like this, it may not be 75 feet. If you don't have one that has this type of rope, if it has that plastic nylon type of rope, throw it in the trash. You're not going to get it anywhere. Okay, there's some of that black nylon rope we found on the little boat this morning, and it's worthless. There's no weight to it. This at least has some weight. One other way that you can add some weight to this is dunk it in water. You can't necessarily do that in ice, but this thing has a little bit of weight to it. Okay? All right. Yeah, I've also seen it where people throw it and everything goes with it.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. Hey, we carry, I think, 5 of these on our apparatus, plus there's 2 more in our water bags. Okay? So guess what? If I jump off and I grab 2 or 3 of them and I miss with the first one, forget that one. I'm throwing a second one. Okay? So grab multiple. If you've ever had to wind them back up and throw them again, you're not getting near what you would on that very first throw. Okay. Reach techniques for our purposes. Some places will talk about using ladders and using air-filled hose. Do we have the capabilities of filling a hose with air? No, we don't. And let's just talk about how impractical it really is for our purpose when we have the equipment to actually effect a go rescue and we have decent throwing devices. The only other reaching device that you'll see is a ladder, and ladders are pretty impractical also. Okay? You stick a ladder out on ice, especially thin ice, what's going to happen to it when somebody grabs a hold of it? It's going to sink. Yep, and it's going to sink. And if it's anybody like my daughter, and when I take her tubing, I pull her through the water, she doesn't let go. Okay? Somebody that's cold and can't really hang on anyway may not be able to necessarily use their muscles and let go of it. Okay? Pike poles, absolutely. Okay? Which end do we stick towards the victim? It's a trick question. You give them the pike end. Okay? Because even, especially those H-type, but even the big round poles, somebody that's been in any type of cold water for a period of time is not going to be able to grab a hold of that, but they might be able to just grab a hold of the pike end. Okay, trash hook, whatever else that you could potentially reach out there for them. Okay.
Near drowning and a stabbing.
Yeah. You know what though? We talk about using a pike pole to reach down and grab somebody. Man, you would have to literally be stabbing to actually puncture somebody. Okay? Nothing moves fast in water. Even if you put a bullet through water, it's not going very far. So the likelihood of you stabbing somebody versus maybe grabbing a hold of a piece of their clothing, sorry. Yeah, grabbing a hold of their piece of their clothing and maybe trying to float them up pretty easily is a lot better of an opportunity and chance.
Buoy.
Oh, the other thing we don't typically throw out is a buoy. If you hit somebody, especially if they're hanging on an ice shelf with a buoy, you can knock them right off the ice shelf. Okay. And technician level, ice rescue basically involves 2 rescuers donning dry suits, PFDs. We'll actually utilize 1 rescuer and 1 backup. And that backup can be on a truck coming. Is that, okay? Because let's be real, this is a non-discretionary timed event. If that backup rescuer is on a rig on their way, they're considered the backup rescuer. Okay? Tethered rescue proceeds to the victim location, secure flotation to the victim. We're not taking a life jacket out to the victim on ice rescue or even surface ice most of the time, or surface water most of the time. In an ice rescue situation, you're not going to get a life jacket on them. They might be able to grab a hold of it, but if they're sitting on an ice shelf, you want them staying on that ice shelf. You don't want them trying to reach for anything else. Okay, so rope bag, perfect. Pike pole, perfect. If you want to slide a life jacket and they're 15 feet away, but you just can't reach them, slide a life jacket to them. It's not going to hurt, but we're not going to take the time to try and put one on them. Okay, and then hauled to shore with the victim. We've got a specific, I guess, technique or rope set to do this.
Hey Josh, are rings effective? Big rings?
Yeah, that's why I meant by buoy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you don't throw a ring buoy at them because you can knock them off the shelf, or you might just hit them in the head. Okay, if you can reach out with a ring buoy, I'd say that's perfectly acceptable because they can do it. But I would not throw one at a victim. No ice is safe, especially when it relates to ice rescue. But typically, the clearer it is, and the smoother it is, the stronger it is. Some things that can cause ice to be weak: water, snow, rain, the freeze-thaw cycle. Every time we go through a freeze-thaw cycle, it weakens the ice. It makes it look like, oh, hey, we've got 6 inches in there, when you've really only got a ½ inch slush and then maybe another ½ inch, and that is dangerous ice. Objects sticking up through the ice, like that dock I talked about, anywhere that you have an object sticking up through the ice, it's going to be weaker in that area. And then any moving water under the ice, and as Captain pointed out yesterday, what? Ducks on a pond.
About the ducks on the pond, we went out last week and we checked some ponds for the ice thickness, and it was all about ½ inch and a half. We went to FOP pond. There was an area, I would say 30 by 30, that was total open water due to about 40 ducks that kept the water open. And what can happen is if those ducks leave and it's real cold, or somebody scares them off or walks down and sees them, they'll fly off, and that can skim back over, and they can't open it back up. If you go out by Cops Lakes, that's a pure example, they keep it open the spot year round. So now you got a 30 by 30 spot, and the rest of your lake might go up to 5 inches, it might an inch.
Which
It's
is,
nothing to be aware about.
which remember at the beginning I told you we went out last year, we had 4 or 5 inches. That's the case where it may not be that way everywhere. Okay, and any other penetrations, especially around dams and inlets, especially these retention ponds, when you get water that's flowing through the inlets, because we go through a lot of freeze thaw and rain and cold, and then 60 degrees, 70 degrees out. You can also tell a little bit about what's going on in the ice just kind of taking a look at it. Okay, whether you have water that's flowing into this farm pond and causing water to be on that ice or whatnot versus the snow-covered area that might be a little bit more stable, not safe. Moving water, stream, you know, there's all kinds of dangers that are involved in moving water, and anybody that's been through the swift water can probably recognize these. With the exception of very small streams, the ones that we know that we could walk across, we're not doing swift water and ice related stuff. At least not that I'm teaching. Okay. Obstructions up through the ice. So here it looks like we've got maybe some remnants of old cattails. They laughed at that yesterday. Everybody know what a cattail is? Okay. That could also cause that ice to be weak, but hey, it might prompt somebody to go out and take a look at it, and that's where the problems begin. All right, so max load tables, these are just generalizations. So 2 inches for one person, 4 inches for a group, 5 inches for a snowmobile, 8 for a car, 10 to 12 for a light truck. Hopefully we never see more than 4 or 5 inches, because that means it's been really, really cold for a really long time, and I don't like that anyway. But again, no ice for our purposes is safe ice. There might be stable ice, but there's not safe ice. Okay, and we don't put anybody on any iced water without the proper equipment. So you saw those cops, you even saw the fire department, that the guy in the Gumby suit was the only one that went in the water. Even if it's 5 inches thick, we're not putting anybody that's not in a suit out on the ice. Questions? All right. If someone's gone through the ice, consider the ice to be unsafe. Again, there is no safe ice. Don't go on the ice with anyone who is not trained, properly equipped to go on the ice. We just talked about that. All right, so ice rescue equipment, PPE, flotation device, exposure suits, throw bags. We're not worried about inflated fire hose, hand tools, any type of reaching device. I say pike pole just because that's typically the longest reaching device that we have available to us. I say no to ladders, but again, it's all discretionary. If you think the ladder's going to work, then that's up to you all. And other related equipment, which is what we have with the bags, and we actually have a ice rescue specific bag that we'll go over here in a bit. Technician PPE should be a dry suit with thermal liner and a PFD. This is what we have. All that we have are dry suits and the 4/6 life jackets. It's either going to be red or the new style is black. Okay. We do have thermal liners. That's just a fleece liner that goes underneath it also. Our dry suits are not flotation devices. You get air in them and you'll float, but if you burp all the air out, it doesn't provide enough buoyancy for you to actually utilize it without a PFD. And then the other option is ice rescue suit, which we'll have some slides on. Look, hang on. Rescuers should always plan on being in the water, and movement in the suits may be awkward. The suits may leak at the neck seal. The biggest difference between The ice rescue suits and the water suits that we have are, number one, the ice rescue suits have integrated gloves. These do not. They just have a I don't know, what compression seal, and then you wear gloves over the top of it, and then they have a hood that comes up versus this just stops at, ours just stop at the neck. And the ice rescue suits actually have buoyancy in them to where you don't have to wear a PFD. A lot easier to move in these than it is in the Ice Commanders, I can tell you that. Other equipment, Stokes basket, backboards. We have one Stokes basket that is set up like this. Where is it? On the boat. Okay. Backboards do provide some buoyancy, and we'll talk about what they can and shouldn't be used for. And the rest of the Stokes that we have do not float. So the Junkin Stokes that you have, or even the mesh type, wire mesh type Stokes, they don't float. So we shouldn't be dragging them out onto the ice because you put somebody in it. Natural inclination would be to strap them down. What's going to happen? They're going to sink. Plastic backboard, if you've got to get somebody up and over an ice sledge, which it looks like they've had to cut this one out because it's nice and square, it can be utilized for that capacity. But outside of that, you're better off doing it by yourself and just rolling over. There's a specific technique to getting a person up off of an ice shelf and out of the water and towards the shore. But if they're a large person, you may need that help to ramp them up that backboard. Okay, so for rescuers, ice rescue suits, dry suits with a PFD, which is what we use, and for support personnel, PFD and thermal protection. So what's one thing that we've always talked about you don't wear near water? Bunker gear. Okay, this would be an incident commander or the officer's discretion whether we utilize bunker gear near the water, simply because of the cold. Okay, you know, hey, if you've ever been outside, even in your street clothes or your normal clothes, it gets cold out, and it can get cold out pretty quick. One other thing is if you're coming off of a run and you've already got bunker pants on, how many people throw their shoes into the back of the truck with them? Yeah, I always do, just because if I want to go to the store or something always happens inevitably. But if you don't, guess what? You're wearing bunker gear, right? All right, so the one thing that we have to remember is to be disciplined not to involve ourselves if we have bunker gear on. Make sense? All right. If the department puts out an SOP or SOG, that's what we'll follow. Okay. This is a Gumby suit, typical ice rescue suit. We don't have them, so I'm not going to talk about them. This is the Ice Commander. The other big thing is that they actually have a harness that is built into them. But like I said, they have integrated gloves. It's got a nice hood. It's just as much of a pain to get in and out of as what we have. And they have integrated boots, so you don't have to put on boots separate. Ice rescue suits generally fit, one size fits all. They are Coast Guard approved PFDs. We don't have harness, quickly don, and offer the thermal protection. And dry suits. So this will be either scuba or surface dry suits. We carry surface dry suits. That offers very limited thermal protection. When we were out last year, it was very cold out. Like I said, 5 inches of ice that we had to cut through and get in the water. We had the thermal fleece on, and we're probably out there an hour and 20 minutes, and I got a little bit cold. Okay, if we're out there on an actual rescue for an hour, number one, we've done something wrong, or we've not provided effective resources to rehab people out of that environment. Make sense? So what we have is perfectly adequate. It needs to be supplemented with Coast Guard approved PFD. Like I said, we have the 4.6s, whether they're red or they're black. They're great PFDs. And needs to be supplemented with a harness attached to a tether, which every one of these, if they're applied properly, have a harness that can be attached to our tether. Okay, anybody that's been through the Swiftwater class knows how to use this and knows that it will hold you until you release it. Okay. This is a typical dive suit, and this is almost identical to what we carry. We talked about our PFDs. Depending on what the department policy, I think even the city has a policy, whether it's 10 to 15 feet within the distance of the water, you have to be in a PFD. Let's just put them on. The only PFDs that that the shore people should have are the ones that are available. The only one that the rescuer should have should be one of these 4.6s or the black ones, the one that actually have these. So if you guys have those orange type, those are perfectly acceptable. Don't become involved in the incident, but that's still a PFD. A question was asked yesterday whether the inflatable ones would be acceptable. The inflatable ones are only on the boat, and we only utilize them when we're just out pleasure boating, if you will. If we're actually responding on an incident, we put on one of these. So that is not an approved PFD. I don't even know how well they'll function in cold water or even ice water. Okay? So just something to think about. We're not using those. You're not going to get on the boat and grab one anyway. Thermal protection for support personnel. You need to have appropriate thermal protection in addition to a PFD. Again, that's dependent on what you show up with, right? Most likely you get wet from handling ropes, assisting the personnel in and out of the suits. So water-resistant gloves and boots should be utilized. It's not always available, but within our small ice kit here, we've got a couple of extra pair of gloves. Anybody that has one of these bags, there's a set of gloves in each one of these bags, should be. Okay. Outside of that, fire gloves, with the exception of the Tempos, because they all have a water barrier, moisture barrier. Okay. Again, we shouldn't be out there for long periods of time, and if we are, we should be properly rehabbing people out of that environment anyway. Structural firefighting gear should be avoided if at all possible. As we see here, it looks like it's a cold weather related. We've got jeans, sweatshirt. At least they've got some PFDs on, right? Yeah. Hey, you got to do with what you got on hand. ISOLs, we do have 2 pair of ISOLs. They can be used for self-rescue and for ice that you just can't walk on or that you need to crawl on. These actually have a retractable awl in them. That way you don't accidentally puncture your suit. Okay? But you just dig these things into the ice and you can crawl your way out of a hole or crawl your way towards a victim. Reaching devices, like I said, pike pole. I don't know what they've got rigged up here, but it looks like a handle on maybe a pike pole. And then also a rope tether. Throwing devices, we've talked about. And rowing devices, I can tell you this one's junk. The only rowing devices that we have are Avon boat and the John boats. Okay, and usually if we're sending one person in a suit out, how easy is it going to be for one person to pull a John boat out or get somebody into that John boat? Okay, the quicker, easier way is a go rescue than it is with a row before you go. Okay, we are going to request one of these. Yeah, that way we can just drive and we'll do ducky tours out on the Ohio and all kinds of other stuff with it. No. Yeah, it's not next. There'll be a picture of what's called a Fortuna. It's the perfect ice rescue. In fact, it's a great surface ice rescue type of inflatable rapid deployment device that can be utilized, and they work great. But if we don't have them, we still resort back to the go. Okay. Should we do it? Anybody need a break? All right, so we're going to do 15 minutes for our 1 hour of EMS hypothermia this month. Okay, So hypothermia, body temperature 95 degrees or less, usually caused by increased heat loss. You lose heat by conduction, convection, most of the time in winter. So conduction, you usually lose it 25 to 30 times faster when you're actually in water. Convection, when you're out in ambient air temperature. Okay, what were the wind chill factors last week? Yeah, negative 20. Okay, so that is a convection issue. So that's something that we need to worry about our support personnel, right? Anybody that's in the water, we've got to worry about how long they've been in the water because they lose it so much faster, but we still have to consider the air movement and the ambient air temperature outside.
Josh, is there a set time, how long a rescuer should be out there before you switch out?
Just in my personal opinion, I would compare it to confined space rescue, 20 minutes. Okay, if you're out there more than 20 minutes, something has gone catastrophically wrong. Because if you can get in the suit and you can get out to a victim, you should be able to pull them back with relative ease in a pretty quick manner. But if you're out there longer than 20 minutes, you've got to start thinking about, hey, I need to rotate this rescuer out.
Recovery, search for pipe hole.
Yeah, so if you're out there, searching, beneath an ice or even beneath the surface with a pike pole, people are going to want to stay out there. How many times have we seen it on a car wreck? People get to that point of exhaustion and they're not making much headway because they don't want to stop. Well, and nobody I've ever seen in this job wants to stop doing what they're doing. Okay, so great question, great point. Stage 1, hypothermia, victim's conscious alert, will be shivering. What is shivering? Your body's response to that heat loss. Okay, shivering requires a lot of energy. Once you start burning off that energy, your body starts to lose functions. Okay, they may be able to assist with their own rescue. Stage 2. Will be conscious but not necessarily oriented. Shivering typically stops, their fine motor skills deteriorate, and they may or may not be able to assist with rescue. We'll talk about what some of the roles are, but if you've got somebody out there talking to a victim, it increases their chances of survival dramatically. Because if you can get them talking or you can start talking to them, they have a reason to fight to live. Okay. Stage 2, the stumbles, mumbles, grumbles. We've got one of those. No, but if they're mumbling or speaking Utica, like we said yesterday, then there might be, you might recognize that they're at that stage 2 level of hypothermia. Okay.
Herschel or hey.
Utica, yeah, Pam. All right, stage 3, typically unconscious, full body muscle rigidity, unable to assist with rescue. Vital signs may be difficult to determine. It's usually the last stage before death. There have been documented cases, especially in children, where 90 minutes submerged is still recoverable rescue. Okay, what was the old TV show Rescue 911? Anybody ever watch that? Where they would have actual recreations of live incidents. One of them specifically is a kid that went through the ice and spent 90 minutes underwater, and they revived him. Okay, so what's the old mantra? They're not dead till they're warm and dead. If the victim's not shivering, likely at least moderate hypothermia. There have been documented cases of victims revived after 60 minutes. Like I said, I know that one was 90 minutes, but for our intensive purposes, almost everything is recoverable that we should at least try. Make sense? All right, so patient care, remove them from the cold and remove the cold from the victim. What's the difference between the two? What's that?
Get the person out of the water, but then get the wet garments and everything off them.
That's it. Yeah. Hey, wet garments are 10 times worse than them being naked in cold ambient air, because 25 to 30 times higher rate of heat loss when you're wet. Okay? So get them out of the water and get the water out of them. Patient must be transported. Try and handle them gently. Why do we want to handle a cold water rescue person gently? Risk of VFib. Who said that? Brent. Good job. Yeah, risk of VFib. Yeah, any unnecessary handling could potentially cause them to go into cardiac arrest. Okay? And they're not dead until they're warm and dead. Near drowning, in a drowning you have that mammalian dive reflex. When you're submerged into cold water, the body will shunt all of its blood flow from your extremities to your vital organs, which is what allows that potential for a long recovery to actually happen. Factors affecting the survival: age, submersion time, the actual health of the patient, cleanliness of the water, the temperature, the victim's struggle, and the care that they actually receive. Okay, we're that first line of care. We're also have a little bit of effect on at least their exposure time. Okay. Assisting the rescuer. These suits only have one difficult part to them, and that's getting your head through the neck hole. It typically requires somebody to help you. Yeah, that head's not fitting through the neck hole. I don't know if yours is either, but
A lot of brain.
if I had that head full of nickels.
Right people in the right places.
Yeah, right people in the right places. But that's usually the only thing that's required. So one person can be back at the truck getting suited up, with the exception of that neck hole, right? All right. Then when they come up to the area where throw bags are being thrown, somebody can stop and assist them and get them finished dressed. Okay. We also have, I know in our bags and in this bag, we also have these nice little thermal hoodies. Just remember, once you put these on, your hearing goes to almost nothing, which is why we use hand signals anyway. So communications, we will use hand signals. All right, what's this?
Okay.
Okay. Take up slack. Let's go. Those are the 4 hand signals that we'll utilize for ice rescue or surface water rescue. Okay, not quite the same as rope rescue, but some of them are, right? Okay, this just means, hey, it's time for you to start pulling me. And when you're out there and you've got a hold of a victim, you just making that motion is difficult enough. Okay, so that's why we try and keep it simple. And then hauling the rescuer and the victim, we actually have a setup with a rope bag and an actual ice rescue sling. Not just yet. We'll take a break. So figure 8 on a bite on the end. This actually gets attached to the rescuer, the D-ring I showed you on the PFD, and then they carry this out with them. Carabiner goes around the victim and cinches on the victim. Okay, then the whole thing gets pulled by a team at the shore. Okay, like I said, there's a specific technique to getting the victim up out of the ice, unless it's like what we saw the fire department in the Gumby suit. He's got to break through the ice just to get out there. All right, once he's broken through the ice, his path back is a lot easier. But as he gets to that victim, that last little ice shelf that victim might be hanging on to is pretty critical. All right, we'll go over that a little bit more. All right. Ensure the rescuer removes all sharp items and
Your watches.
Yep.
Last year when we did it, I had a rather large watch. If you're putting on that suit with that compression sleeve, it fits pretty tight to begin with. Kind of hard for y'all to get your hands through, but where that compression sleeve is, it's right where my watch was. And after a few minutes, my whole hand went completely numb, not because of the ambient temperature of the cold or being in the water, but because of how much pressure the suit itself is putting on my watch. So it was a good thing to learn in training. That way now I know anytime I'm going to put on a suit, the watch comes off in the truck on our way, we're responding.
Yep. Who's not put a suit on? Awesome. This guy. You put one of those suits on? All right. The biggest problem is getting your wrists through, right? Outside of the neck hole, but once you get your wrists through, it's kind of a pain, and they are tight. The neck hole, yeah. The next thing.
I thought I was in the wrist.
All right, try to get the rescuer into a climate-controlled environment. What do we have that's a climate-controlled environment? The back of a fire truck. Okay, if you grab that setup on your way there, can you reasonably get dressed with a seatbelt on? At least partially, right? Yeah, you can at least start. Should ensure the suit is on properly. All zippers closed completely. Ask Nick Stone. He effected a water rescue on the actual Ohio where he had to go in the water and grab a guy who was hanging onto a log, and his zipper wasn't completely closed. And if you realize that these things don't provide enough buoyancy and you add water to them, they get even worse. Okay. Flaps and PFD. Rope setup, we've already talked about. Make sure it's rope that's long enough to reach the victim. We will have two of these particular setups, and that's the orange rope. You guys can use your utility rope, life safety rope, anything that you really want. We are going to put in they make a specific water rescue rope that floats. Outside of that, these work just fine. Okay. Carabiners, preferably the non-locking type, is what will happen to them. They will freeze. We didn't have the capability of doing that on here, so we just put some tape on it so that it won't self-lock. Okay? And then it's a figure 8 on a bite on the end, and then a directional figure 8. They'll show another figure 8 on a bite, and we'll just use a directional. So, just like so, you can actually utilize this if you don't have the ice sling to go back on itself and cinch on the victim. That's what we had set up until we got the slings. The slings just make it a little bit easier on the victim, okay? And it makes it a little bit easier for us to grab a hold of with gloves on and when it's cold, okay? Once rescuer's in the suit, like I said, talking and hearing can be impaired. Hand signals we went over. What are they? All right. All right, so what team members do we have? Incident commander, spotter, primary rescuer, primary tender, backup rescuer, and backup tender. And we'll stop here for just a second. So who's the initial incident commander? First arriving officer, right? Okay, does that mean that you're a working incident commander? Does on almost every incident, right? Unless you're on a truck. No, even if you're on a truck. So you have to recognize what resources you might need to call, and then when the actual incident commander arrives, they take over and you make sure that the resources are at least en route, or you call for the additional resources that are needed. Your spotter is a very important person, and what you want to try and do is have that person go out and make initial communication with a live victim, or at least find out where they potentially went through. You want to find an object directly across, and like for me to Herthel, about 22 feet out, directly across from the coffee maker. Okay, so if and when he goes under, or when we send a rescuer out there and they start breaking through the ice, I have got a good idea of right where that victim is or was. Make sense? All right. Your primary rescuer is the person that's getting in the suit, and your primary tender is just that additional person who's hopefully out there throwing throw bags. Me as a spotter, can I throw a throw bag? Heck yeah. We want everybody out there throwing throw bags, but I also need to start communicating with the victim. Okay? And then our backup rescuer and backup tender, it takes more than one person to pull 2 bodies off of an ice. So you've got to commit resources to that backup tender, if you will. Okay, but otherwise they can take up slack. They can, play the rope out, make sure that it doesn't follow them onto the ice and whatnot. And then the backup rescuer and backup team is somebody that's en route. Okay, so operations, I'll give the necessary resources to whoever, Glinky, to hopefully put together a SOP or SOG for ice rescue related incidents, but there's nothing overly complicated. It's just recognizing the resources that you have, resources that you need, and what our capabilities are. Pre-planning mutual aid, like I said, we'll go out and try and pre-plan a lot of the ponds that at least gives us depth information and hopefully even some access information. What's the easiest way to drive there and park and stage apparatus? Anything else you think we'd get out of pre-planning?
Hidden pond.
Yeah, we can get things like how close is the parking lot for maybe using the ladder or the tire, how steep the banks are. Even though the closest spot might be here, the command will probably still be over on level ground. There's all kind of resources we get out, plus the depth. And natural springs, overflow.
Hazards.
One of the quicker access, Ellingsworth Farms, right? Everybody knows that's being built and where it's at. Retention ponds are popping up in every neighborhood. And if you look at that one, all that rainwater's coming down that hill, and the inlet is where we would typically respond to first to go into that retention pond, because the inlet is right there at the bottom of the road that they've created. And the outlet is on the other side or the overflow. So just because the quickest access might actually be right where that inlet and water is coming in.
Yep. Anybody that doesn't know where Ellingsworth Farms is, it's the new addition off Herb Lewis, back behind the apartments, Stonebridge apartments that were built back there. Man, if you get a chance, drive back there, because it's a scary place to begin with for other incidents, not just the water related. They are stacked on top of each other. They're all lightweight construction. I would say it's worse than Armstrong Farms. I would say the side yard setbacks are even worse than Armstrong Farms. So.
Some of those houses are literally, 10, 20 feet, probably their back door from this retention pond.
Yeah.
So, we're putting a whole neighborhood right around a retention pond. Kids are definitely going to get out there, especially animals.
Yep.
Those houses on basement,
Some of them, so they have some bi-level, which is a new style, not your typical style bi-level, which is why I said get out there and see them, because they are laid out completely different than what we would envision a bi-level being laid out. Okay, the bedrooms are in the front of the house on both sides rather than on one side with a living area and kitchen on the other. The living area is right in the middle and the kitchen's off to the right, but the master's in front of the kitchen. I'm telling you, go out and look at every building under construction that you can. It will help you anytime that you go to show up there. Okay. Side note. All right, initial on-scene reaction or actions by responders, make a hazard evaluation of the scene, determine proper action, establish a warm zone. So what's our hot, warm, and cold zone? What's a hot zone? The actual water warm zone.
20 feet.
Yep, at least 10 feet back from the water, and your cold zone is where everybody else is, all right? Make verbal contact with the victim. Again, that increases their survivability immensely. If you can make verbal contact with a victim in an ice rescue situation, you have given them at least a reason to hang on for just a little bit longer. Establish the victim location by spotting, triangulation. If we can do it twice, that's great. If we can do it in an X-type pattern, we have plenty of white hats that usually show up to these scenes. As an incident commander, throw Justin or somebody else, trying to triangulate a secondary position. Okay. Attempt to provide some sort of flotation device. No. Throw bags, or any type of reaching device that you can. Okay? Attempt shore-based rescue with throw bags or reaching device. Determine location of victims is critical before the victim's submersion, before the ice breaks apart, or before the ice breaks apart. So like I said, once we start putting somebody out and they're breaking through the ice, you're going to lose bearings of where that patient or where that person is unless you have somebody that is dedicated to spotting them. Usually the victim falls through an isolated weak spot, typically a small area. If it's gotten bigger and you notice big chunks, that means that they have spent a lot of energy trying to get themselves out. Okay? Go back to that stages of hypothermia. If they've already expended a lot of energy, that just means that they're in a little bit more danger. We've already talked about all this. Last point, seeing again. The other things to improve the accuracy of interviewing witnesses that could potentially have seen the event or at least have somewhat knowledge of the event, separate them. Why do we want them separate? Because when the first one says, I saw the kid go in over there, what's the second one going to do?
Me too.
Yeah, me too. If you can separate them and they both have a corroborating story, we're not cops, this is not interrogation, but this is just good intel gathering. If we can corroborate their stories, that gives us better intel, right? All right, how many victims, did anyone make it to shore, and do they know the victims, their names, ages, where do they live? Again, use those police resources. Go to this guy's house. Maybe he's back. Maybe he's hiding in a closet under a bunch of clothes. And we just brought in 30 resources to search this pond. Okay. Mark the victim location, again, using shore objects across the other side. It may not always be possible, but at least try and have a direct line of sight. I have a bad habit of moving around everywhere. Whoever does that spot needs to try and stay in that spot, or at least within a very small footprint. All right. Cold zone area more than 10 feet from the water's edge, increased by the scene conditions utilized for the command post, staging, bystanders. Warm zone area within 10 feet of the water's edge, increased by a variety of scene conditions, the steepness, the slope, and any other hazards that might be associated. We had a lady that drove into the Ohio River a few months ago. Actually, it was Christmas Eve? Christmas Eve at Duffy's Landing. If you knew, the water had come up to about, the first row of parking lot spaces was all the way up almost to the first row of parking lot spaces. And she drove, probably was sitting her car on the grass before it actually reached the river. But it was door window height. And some would-be rescuers got out and pulled her ashore as we're running up. I was running up with throw bags, and Oz was, were you getting dressed? Yeah, Oz was getting dressed. We pulled into the parking lot. It wasn't the closest place for her, but we know that parking lot, right? So, if we can walk right across the parking lot rather than through a ditch and any other unknown obstacle right there, it makes it a little bit safer for us. So even though it's not the closest distance to the victim, it's the known distance to the victim in that type of situation.
I was going to have a question on that. And we thought about getting with other agencies and telling them to spot the victim, don't go in, because they could have very easily became a rescuee on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they went in, and then the problem with them going in was they had bystanders going in trying to help.
Yeah.
So we had 3 people out there plus a victim that could have been, we could have 4 victims.
Not to include the terrain too, because it was pretty
Right, they
steep
went down through a ditch, they
embankment.
didn't even know the terrain.
Yeah, like I said, I would not have gone through that way, which is right through the parking lot. We know the parking lots.
I just think it'd be good to maybe get with the other agencies and.
I know in the past, and maybe the chiefs back there can expand, but we used to do the hazmat awareness for the police department. And when I would do the hazmat awareness for the police department, I would talk about some other things like their apparatus staging on, or their police car staging on fire scenes and accident scenes, what we need from them. I'd take about a half an hour and just talk about some of that little stuff like we could with this type of incident. I know that we have worked pretty well with them, at least on Thunder and the incident command system, but it's not quite where it needs to be. So I don't know if there's, it's not working. Then right there.
They're doing a lot better on fire scenes than they have in the past.
Yeah, I only have to yell at them about one every 5. Do you carry hose on that police car? And the answer is usually no. All right, but
We reached out to them and we just don't get a response. What is it, main on several issues?
and the bad thing is we need to, and it's going to take a significant incident where somebody gets hurt.
These days, one go get hurt running in there trying to put the fire out or
Yeah,
it
they're-
does handle it.
Or worst case scenario, we're going to have an active shooter at one of the schools, and it's going to be a big cluster. Whereas if we just work together, it would go so much further.
Even on that run that we had on Christmas Eve, the police officers on site were asking
Yeah.
about what they could do to help, and they were thinking that they were gonna get a throw bag to put in their trunk of their squad car. So the likelihood of that video we showed earlier, that chance is gonna continue to increase as some of these guys that we're getting, we've got a lot of new police officers like we've gotten a lot of new firemen. They're gonna be out there trying to help just the same as we are, because we all know they do 80 mile an hour straight to the scene faster than we can get there, so.
Captain Schnatter brought up a pretty good point, is that the guys that are assigned to their boat crew, and it's a specialty, are willing to work with us in just about any capacity that we need to on the water. Whether that transcends anywhere else in the department, I don't know. I know SWAT guys, I think, work a little bit differently, but if you look at the police service overall, they act independently almost 99% of the time. You know, that 1% they might be acting under a very slim or marginal incident command system, whereas we don't act independently. Okay? So it's just a different mentality, and I wish that we could work a lot better together, but that's not up to me. All right, we talked about hot, cold, warm. Any questions? Okay. Talk, reach, throw, row, go. Again, talk, reach, and throw, and go. You know, by the time we get an actual boat to a scene, we need to be on the ice. We need to be in the water. We need to be pulling that victim out, unless we have some sort of rapid deployable piece of equipment that can be utilized. Attempt verbal contact, reassure them, and try and get them to self-rescue. Hey, can you come to me? Come to me. Hey, can you reach my throw bag? You know, the more that you talk to somebody, the more likely they are to follow commands. If anybody's ever fallen in cold water or jumped in cold water, I can tell you I've done it once. It was only 57 degrees, so it wasn't even that cold. But it was for a triathlon. I went out thinking, oh, no big deal. I jumped in that water and it took my breath away. It shocked the heck out of me. I thought I was going to drown. So cold water shocks people to the point they don't know what to do. Okay, so if you can talk to them and have them follow commands, there's a good chance that they will. All right, we've already been through all this. We'll kind of skip through. That's a Fortuna. Okay. If I had a recommendation of a rapid deployable device, it would be that right there. It's very stable. You can actually use it in swift water. It's great for surface water also. It has 2 open ends and a nice flat surface that's all inflatable. It takes about 1/3 of an SCBA bottle to fill up, and it fills up real quickly. You walk that thing right out on the ice, put your victim underneath it, and you pull them right out. It's relatively easy to do, and they will try and climb up, and there's things to grab on to do it. Outside of that, it looks like they've got either an inner tube or maybe a small Zodiac. We will not utilize the Avon boat. It's got a wooden bottom. It's not like a true rib or a true Zodiac style. Plus it's too heavy, and even the John boats would be too difficult for one or even two people to try and pull out there. If you can row it out there, that's a different story. But if you have to drag it across ice, then it's useless. Fire hose, reaching. Let's skip that. All right, so go preferred method because the victim is not expected to assist in rescue and it's a non-discretionary time event. One person rescue approaches the victim from the side or the back, typically because they're trying to hang on to an ice shelf. They're trying to keep their head above water without having to expend too much energy. So if you can approach them from the back, you're not breaking that ice shelf. And if you do break that ice shelf, you've got to be prepared to grab a hold of them. Okay? It's not like a typical drowning victim also. They're cold. They're not going to turn around and try and drown you. And you've got plenty of flotation to take two people. But if you can grab them by one arm and bear hug them, that's all that we try and do. Okay? Wear a dry suit or ice rescue suit with a tether. Keep low center of gravity once you're on the ice. You'll realize what you can walk across and what you have to crawl, and then what you have to scoot your way across. Sometimes you just have to break through the ice, but it's that last point of breaking through the ice that you reach their shelf that you've got to be able to reach and grab a hold of them real quickly. Then you're just pulled right back through the ice that you broke. Okay, any questions? All right. One other thing about these suits, and anybody that wants to put one on today, is they have to be burped. And then once you get in the water, they have to be burped again. The big advantage of these suits over the ice rescue suits are those things, you are literally like a bobber in water. Where these, you can actually physically move, your feet go down below you, and you're floating by your PFD. You just have a better center of gravity with these type suits. Secure the victim with the loop and signal the rescuers to all right, so see somebody in a Gumby suit calling his way out onto the ice. To make contact with the victim, the best approach is from the side or back. Like I said, you want to try and keep their shelf intact as much as possible. It's likely weak due to attempts of self-rescue and will break under your weight. If you've got a backboard, it can be placed along the edge, but that's something that, man, if the first rescue attempt doesn't work, that's plan B. The first rescue attempt should be able to go out there, grab that person, either get them up on the ice or you're breaking your way through the ice coming back. Victim could grab the rescuer as they approach, but likely hypothermia, their motor skills aren't going to be nearly as tuned as an actual drowning victim. If the victim is holding onto the front and holding on the ice in front of them is broken, it's likely that they will submerge. Again, if they're hanging on for dear life, once that shelf that they have or whatever thing that they're hanging on to, they're likely to submerge. That's where you gotta grab them quick. If attempting to rescue an animal, just be aware that they may bite. That's just nature of the job. Okay, but animals are pretty similar. That once they get hypothermic too, they're probably going to be more glad that you're there than not. Movement should be done by crawling, sliding on top of a backboard. If you're crawling, these things work great. They just help scoot you along pretty quickly. We're not going to use a basket litter. Critical step in movement on the ice is disperse the rescuer's weight by laying down. Enhanced movement position is to use ice hauls, even screwdrivers. We have the awls. We've got 2 sets. If we put together a whole second setup, each of them will have one set of ice hauls. Additional rescuers can use backboard or some type of litter. Again, to me, it's just a waste of time. All right, so each rescuer entering the water should be attached to the tether. That way, you can always be pulled back, okay? If for some reason, which the downfall to these life jackets is that they can be accidentally released, but if you have a hold of the victim is still attached to the tether, okay? The likelihood of this thing being accidentally released is pretty slim. And if it's done right, which I'm sure TJ, Captain Irvin know how to do it, it's not going to come undone. Okay, we'll go over that. Although against normal practice, again, don't lock carabiners; they may freeze shut. All right, if you hear the ice breaking, keep moving, try and stay ahead of it. Or if you've got to break through it, just break through it. You saw the guy, yeah, he probably needed to burp his suit, but he's breaking his way through the ice to get to the victim in that Naperville video. If you need self-rescue, the ice hauls work great. If not, I mean, you just have to man up and kick your way up onto the ice and roll. But we'll do a lot of this stuff if we actually get out and get some ice and get to go out and play. All right, I think that's about it. Okay, so removal of victim. If you can utilize the ice rescue, what do I call this? Sling. Sling, that's perfect. What's the problem with them doing it there? We've already talked about one thing that you should do.
You should be behind them.
Yep. Should be behind him. How easy is it going to be to get that thing around his arms like that? Okay, and this doesn't look like a sling. It looks like a giant noodle attached to a rope, and it could just be threaded through the rope. So all they're doing is just trying to put it up and over him. But to try and pull him just from his shoulders without a cinch up out of that ice is not going to work. Okay, you have to actually get in the water. The cinch will help us, because once that cinch is down, it's not likely to slip up over his shoulder blades and over his head. But with us grabbing a hold of him and helping him up onto the ice, it makes it a lot easier. So just like this, you see him in there behind him. He's getting ready to come in and attach. And the method is as simple as that. You put that on, take up slack, and you put your knee right in their bottom. Okay? Once you hit that go, you're kneeing them up onto that ice. If you've got stable ice that you're putting them up on, you're kneeing them up on the ice, stop, you grab them, you kind of barrel roll to the side of your back, and you get drug off the ice. It's that simple.
You want to do that before you come on the ice instead of getting underneath them and rolling in the ice. You can't really do that.
No, like I said, you've got to lift them up first.
Hold them out first.
Yeah, and then you're kicking your way up to come up on the top of the ice right after them, which you're being pulled to, which helps. And then you're just grabbing them and barrel rolling them. If both of you are too heavy and the ice starts to break, guess what? You're just grabbing them and you're accepting all of the brunt of that on your back, not on the victim. Okay? And the way that this is set up, when it's pulled, you should be the first one pulled, not the victim. Okay?
How fast do you pull?
Yeah, do you turn around and start running? Yeah, so ideally hand over hand. One person's not going to pull two people. Okay? If you have to turn around and walk, one person's got to be having their eyes on the rescuer. Because as soon as he does that, yeah, everybody has to stop walking. Okay? All right, let me skip that. Again, we talked about that backboard. If for some reason you need to get somebody some help up onto that ice shelf, a backboard could potentially be used. They do float. They're not real stable. If anybody's ever put one into a pool, trying to get them underneath a victim is not the easiest thing in the world either. Care should be taken when moving victims across icy edges. They may be sharp, cause additional injuries. Victim removal to the warm zone can quickly be achieved by sliding the victim over the ice rather than attempting to pull through the water or broken ice. Again, if you have to pull them through broken ice, that's it. There's not a whole lot that you can do about them. But if you can get them up on an ice shelf and scooting across the ice, it works fantastic. All right. Any questions? I'm not going to go through the summary. I just talked about everything. No questions? Everybody in here has been in a suit, right? Been in it with the thermal protection. Okay. We're not going to do throw bags today just because of the weather outside. But take the time, go outside, do throw bags. Make it a contest, throw a cone out there somewhere and just try and have some fun with it. Does anybody want to get in the suit today? Huh? Yeah. All right, I need somebody to come up here and at least put. Come on up, Herthel. This guy will be our victim. All right, so this will go on over the suit, not underneath. Go ahead and zip it up.
I always mess up the technical. So what's the correct way to this?
All right, hang on. Do this. That's one of your most important. And this should, if you pull on both of these. Yep, and then all of these straps adjust too. Nope. All right, so this, when it comes in here, actually goes through the bottom ring, back through the top ring. Okay, then it goes through the release clasp, and clasp goes down. Okay, so now this should not ever come out unless he releases it. Okay, so that's our tether, and if he releases it, go and let go. It will come completely out. Yeah. So that's probably the weakest link to this being utilized for ice rescue is the potential to release that. Yeah, don't forget the D-ring.
That's
Cigar perhaps. Beef jerky.
Yeah, so some of these have glow sticks in them. Most of them have a knife. Try not to pull that knife out in case you puncture your suit.
Is there any way to attach these to that?
There is. These are actually made for the Ice Commander suits because they have a little channel and fit in nice little pockets. But if you guys want to play with it and figure that out. I kept them separate just because we don't know which one the rescuer will actually pull off.
Well, yeah, they probably do need to be in there. About 7 or 8 feet. If you're gonna just make one real quick out of your rope.
Yeah, so if we have this set up on our apparatus.
About 7 or 8 feet at this part.
Yeah. We have one set up already on our apparatus. Like I said, we have a second sling and we actually have a second orange rope and rope bag. It's up to the battalion chiefs to decide who gets it or if anybody gets it or if we're doing this or not.
I got a question. So who would be interested in possibly being one of the ice rescuers?
No. No. You know, our equipment's our only limitation.
Put that thing back up that shows the thicknesses of the ice.
We'd like to kind of, the reason we'd like to know that is like today, or when we get ice, who's on duty, who's willing, at what station, not that anybody's gonna get transferred, but it's a resource. Instead of calling this station, let's call this station, we got Michael Osborne. He's willing and ready, and he's
Break
done
through the
it
ice.
to break through the ice.
I'd do
And, but we need to know that. And we will
Yeah.
wanna make a list of it.
So when we hopefully, like I said, if we get some ice this year, we'll come out with each crew and run through some scenarios. We did it with just our station crew 2 last year, just 5s and 2s, and some people were pretty timid. Eventually, Boyer got on a suit. So if you guys have any questions, talk to Boyer. Boyer put on a suit and he said, "Man, this is not a big deal," and it's not. Putting this suit on and going out and effecting an ice rescue is not a dangerous or a big deal that we deal with. My other recommendation, whether it's surface ice rescue or surface rescue, water rescue, or ice rescue, any type of water-related incidents, we should be putting these suits on anyway. Flooding is a major issue, and we do respond to floods. What's the worst part about floodwaters? It's the crap that's in it. Okay? Ask Rex. Rex got sick because of floodwaters. I can tell you that there have been multiple cases of firefighter deaths after flooding incidents because they've gotten cut and gotten a bacterial infection that just doesn't go away.
We had an
Okay.
incident 2 years ago, I think it was on Rhonda or Avondale, where the water main busted. But what it was doing, it was going in, it was actually flooding the sewers too. We had water up in the car windows on that street. And it was 5 in the morning, it's pitch black dark. We got the boat out, we all suited up, all 3 of us. But when we came out,
My weight does decrease in the water.
what are the people that staged at the truck and in the safe zone, they're helping us remove suits, pulling our boat, and they're all contaminated. Every one of them's contaminated. So it's just something to keep in your mind around floodwaters. You don't actually have to be in the water to be contaminated.
Yeah, good point. Huh? Oh, all right. So in each of these bags, and I've not inventoried each bag, we do have fleece thermal liner. There was a little bit of discussion yesterday whether or not we even waste our time or spend our time putting these on. It's subjective, man. If you got time, put them on. If not, just put the suit on. Like I said, hopefully we're not exposing you for a long period of time. We had these on and we were out for an hour and 15 minutes in probably 10-degree weather.
Yeah, it was fine.
And it was fine. So in 10-degree weather, even just with the suit, if you're out there less than 20 minutes, you're probably going to be fine.
Getting good at putting your gear on, it's not gonna take you very long to put that bunny suit on, and then,
Yeah.
it does take you a long time.
All right. Again, we've got the Mustang Swiftwater water rescue suit. 2 zippers, one here, one here. It does have suspenders in it. A lot of times they get forgotten. They're not necessary unless you're standing around with it tied around your waist waiting on something to happen. Okay, then they're nice and comfortable to have rather than putting all that weight on your waist. These do not have integrated shoes. So when you put these on, before you even stand up, you need to put shoes back on. Each one of these bags is labeled with the size of suit and the size of shoe that is in it. If for some reason you pull out an extra large and it's a size 11, you wear size 12, what other options do you have?
Bend your toes.
Bend your toes, cut them off, right? We have those giant, no, don't cut your toes off. You put your own shoes back on, just in case.
Okay.
All right. All right. Put your own shoes back on and wear them. Okay. Like I said, our bag actually has one of the hoods in it. Each of these should have a set of water rescue gloves. It's the only other place outside of the neck that is not watertight. It is not waterproof. It is watertight. So it is It is nice and tight around your wrist, and then you add these, and the likelihood of you getting wet's pretty slim. And then lastly is an actual helmet. Helmet, you know, they don't use them in the Ice Commander suits, but they're nice to have, especially if you're breaking your back going through the ice. Okay, it's never going to hurt. Any questions about the equipment? We got flippers in here too, and some of these old booty Nick Stone size shoes. Edit that out. All right. Again, every apparatus should have throw bags. Every apparatus should have pike poles. And go ahead.
So
Don't move. I'm
I
coming.
can't really talk a lot, so I'm just gonna come here and try to assist you put this underneath your arms. As I get to this, I'm gonna tell them to go, take up the slack, go.
What's the run? Sit you down. Get up close first.
Right over the rib. Right over the rib.
Higher.
Snap over the rib.
So you want right here. There you go. And then cinch it up.
Do I need to be more, where's this part need to be here? Or?
It really doesn't matter. You should, like I said, you should be one of the first things that are pulled out. All right. Any questions? Everybody have a good day.